5 years ago this month, I built the prototype for this product called Lumio. I'm going to pass this along so you can play with it, and if you don't mind just passing it to the person next to you, hopefully you can make all the way up there. So a lot has happened since then. As John mentioned, I introduced the product on Kickstarter. We did pretty well. We raised 10 times our initial goal. Today we're in 30 countries, 150 outlets, and we've been lucky enough to collaborate with brands like Colette, MoMA, and we have great partners and retailers. I was on Shark Tank in 2014, and we got investment offers from all 5 sharks. We've got a few design awards from Red Dot, Good Design Awards, Cannes Lions, and we've sold more than 500,000 units with a small team of 4 with no marketing budget. But missing from this story is what happens behind the scenes. When John asked me to come here and share my story, at first I thought, well, all right, I probably will share the learnings from various mistakes that I've made. But as I was working through my talk, I felt like an imposter because I've only been doing this for a few years, and I'm still feeling like I'm making mistakes every day. And I can promise you the internet can give you better insight, learning tips than I can in 20 minutes. So I'm going to go off script a little bit. I know the title is Building from Intuition, but I'm actually going to share with you something much more personal. I'm going to bring you to my home and show you some of the design objects that are sitting on my work desk. These are objects that have come into my life from various travels, and some of them are gifts. But every single one has a story and very personal. And some of them I've had for many years, and some of them are recent discoveries. Each one represents an experience from a different chapter in my life. It certainly has influenced me and also helped me shape Lumio as a brand. So this simple bowl, I found it in Tokyo in 2014. I was immediately drawn by its shape and texture. At first, I thought it was a well-crafted ceramic bowl, but then I lifted it up and I was surprised how light it is. I was told that it's carved out of a solid piece of wood that is naturally black in color and only grown in southern Japan. I chose this particular piece here because it has naturally formed notches, 2 and 1 on each side. And I thought it was unique, so it's different from the rest. So I got it, and only after several uses, what I thought was a design defect was actually an ingenious design, because I learned that notches make a perfect resting spot for my chopsticks. So this object here helped influence the way I look at my weakness. Instead of fighting the limitation that I have, I'm slowly trying to work with it and cast it as strengths. When I first started Lumio, I was hungry. I went out there thinking that I have to do every single thing myself. I confused my lack of foresight for entrepreneurial spirit. But it served me well. Well, I was a one-man show, but it was not sustainable. As I was scaling and growing, I started hiring people. I had this naive thought. Just because I excel at being productive and getting things done, bringing on more people would simply mean multiplying the result. So I set expectation as I would expect myself. Great theory, but didn't quite work so well. It wasn't easy for me to admit that I'm not good at managing people. My Asian upbringing has told me that I need to be good at everything. So it took a while And the worst thing that I did was I looked at myself as a failure. I thought, wow, you're horrible at this. But the second that I shifted and started, I stopped telling myself that I suck at this, and I started asking the question, so what makes me happy? So that's when I started being able to prioritize on the things that matter most to me. Now, I understand that running a business has practical challenges that just won't magically disappear just because I don't want to deal with them. But at the same time, it shifted my behavior and outlook. I was able to be my genuine self to the people that I work with, and I tell them, okay, guys, these are the areas that I'm not good at, and I need help. That really shifted the team dynamic, and I focus on what I'm doing at. And when I hire and manage people, I let them do the things that they excel. So by giving them the things that they love doing the most, I was able to turn my lack of ability or sort of my personal defect as a technical manager into a strength to be a leader. So that's what I learned from this simple goal here. Second one, I was in Lisbon recently this past summer. I walked into this souvenir shop. Lots of Portuguese tchotchkes, all of the sardines that you can think of, all of the things that made of cork, but only this product caught my attention. It's a small bottle about 6-inch tall. It contains a traditional liquor made out of passion fruit, and you open the bottle by breaking off its head. So I thought this is very interesting because I was very captivated with how I felt when I interacted with this simple object. It made me feel as if I'm this giant monster sucking the juice out of this tiny creature. To me, that's rare. It might be just like the liquor or me with my wild imagination, but it's rare for an object to give me that sensation, an almost childlike sensation. So right now, I'm designing my second product, and I'm struggling. I'm struggling because I find it very difficult to find something original. The more I see, the more I learn, the more I do research, the more I realize that almost every ideas are recycled to some degree. So I understand that design affects people differently. It's very subjective, which this actually makes it even more difficult to tap into that sort of like golden product. But I also believe there's a universal design language that can be understood by everyone, regardless where you live or who you are. And this is the ultimate goal. And this little object here reminds me when I'm hitting the wall that being good is not good enough. Design needs to go deep and stir emotion in us. I found this cup in a small design shop in London, right across from Victoria and Albert Museum. I love this piece. When I saw this, and I was just like, my jaw dropped. It has a nice matte finish on the outside, inside nice glazing. It looks perfect, but when you look up close, you know it's handmade, so it's not perfectly round. It totally checks all the boxes of a desirable design object. So I hand carried it very carefully. I was too afraid to use it at home, so what I ended up doing was I put it on a shelf as a display. Well, actually, it's kitchen counter as a display, but it was left untouched. So one day, I was making coffee, and I'm a klutz. My Chemex coffee maker somehow tipped over, and it crashed on this cup. It shattered. So today, it's sitting on my work desk, broken, and not serving any practical function. But I kept it because it is a reminder for me not to stop doing the things that I want to do just because I'm afraid of the outcome. So I alluded earlier, I went on Shark Tank 2014. We taped the episode about 3 months prior to the episode airing. It went really well, but I wasn't sure how it will play on TV. My gut was telling me, okay, ramp up production and let's get the inventory in. But I was strapped on cash flow. I know, boring stuff, but it really put the fear in me. So I ended up not ramping up, and guess what happened? Within the few minutes of the episode airing, we sold out of inventory. So I am naturally risk averse. I cannot help that. But I've learned not to base my decision on fear, but strike from a place of strength and just follow my intuition rather than overthinking. So this is a personal story. I promised a very dear friend of mine, Regina, which actually John introduced. So last year, I told her I will accompany her to go to Lake Iseo in Italy to check out the art installation, Floating Piers art installation by the artist Cristo. It's this giant walkway that connects the mainland, and he basically draped the walkway with his signature orange fabric. It's as if you're walking on this piece of golden fabric on the water. Hundreds of thousands of people went there. I was not one of them. I bailed on Regina in the 11th hour because of some work events. Sure. Things like this happen, and it was a launch with a big brand, so it seems like it was a practical and reasonable reason to skip on vacation. Upon her return, she gifted me with this tiny rock. It's very small, has that orange thread tied to it. She told me that as she was walking across, she noticed there's a thread on the fringe of the fabric, and when the guards were not looking, she quickly pulled it. She knew how much I wanted to be there, and she wanted me to have a piece of that experience, even if it's just symbolic. Somewhere in there, I realized that these are moments that I will forever miss. There will be another launch. I can't even remember what that launch was for. But moments with people are fleeting and elusive. I have my blinders on, but I make conscious decision every day to spend more time with the people around me, whether they're friends or team members or even clients. Because I do believe that success doesn't mean much without the relationships that you build with the people around you. This was me when I was 7. I've hidden this picture for most of my entire life, so you can imagine how I'm feeling right now, sharing this on a large screen in front of all of you. Yes, I was embarrassed to show this picture because I thought people would see me as chubby. But there's more to it. Whenever I see this picture, I see imperfection. It reminds me of where I came from and what I went through. I grew up in Jakarta, Indonesia, in a Chinese minority. Never been sporty, definitely not the first choice that you will pick for your team. Being Chinese, I look very different from my classmates. Growing up, being harassed and teased for how you look happens every single day that I didn't know that it's not normal. It really haunted me. I moved to the US 18 years ago on my own to go to college. That was around the time when there was heavy rioting and upheaval targeting Chinese minority there. So finally, after 18 years of waiting, I got my US citizenship earlier this year. So when I started Lumio, I was still an immigrant. And I'm sharing all of this story not for sympathy. I do believe half of the people in the world faces the similar challenges or even greater challenges, and most of them don't even get to share their stories. I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm putting this picture up, and it's not easy for me because I know it's a practice of acceptance. I started learning the Japanese philosophy of wabi-sabi, which roughly translates finding perfection in the imperfection. It really resonated with me. I do believe, well, okay, not to sound like Oprah, but I do believe all of us is perfect in our own way. Now, this is not a belief that naturally came to me. But once I accept all of the things that are imperfect in my life, that's when I have the courage and the strength to do what I believed in. All of us have our own different privileges and challenges, and that pushes us to certain directions. But I believe that it's the choice that we make that makes a difference. We make a choice, and we follow through. 5 years ago, I made the choice to do what I believed in. It started with one handmade prototype, and now I'm on a journey to bring beautifully crafted design objects with invisible technology to people's homes and also for their travels. I will always strive for perfection in whatever I do. But I've learned to leave room for imperfection. Well, take it from that chubby kid on the screen. Life is so much more beautiful and memorable when it's imperfect. Thank you.
Thank you. After 18 years of waiting for U.S. citizenship, do you have any buyer's remorse lately? That's pretty good. 612. Not bad.
But you choose your citizenship not only for the bad things, right? Not only for the good things, but also everything. So it'll be better. So I believe in that, and I can complain and be sad, and I was, but I'm over it. I'm just going to do my thing.
775 asks, what was your career path before Lumio, and how did that lead you to where you are?
So the founder of AIA established this scholarship program. So basically, they select 2 students from each Asian countries to come to the States and study here. It's a free ride, so amazing, amazing opportunity. So I was lucky enough to be one of the scholars, so that's how I started. And when I started, I was majoring in econ. Thank God I didn't end up being a banker. I would suck at it. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but I would be horrible at it. So I started taking architectural classes, and I fell in love with Tadao Ando. And 3rd semester, I did a study program in Paris, and that sealed the deal. And that was that. That was my path to architecture. And then a decade later, I ended up just, it's not by choice, but I moved to San Francisco without a job, and I was basically knocking door to door. I'll take the job, whatever you can give me. So I ended up doing architecture for retail. So the more you're good at something, you get sucked into that rabbit hole, and that's what happened. 10 years later, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm designing retail shops on main streets all over the world. I need to do something else before. Again, I'm sorry for those who are doing retails, but there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not for me. So that's kind of what happened, just kind of the story of how I started this, and I went on a limb and quit my job, and that was 5 years ago.
Did you have a good boss?
Some of them.
When you retail? Okay.
Some of them.
Okay, area code 917. Does your design process for a new product start with a problem you want to solve, a fascination, or something else?
For the longest time, I'm in the closet and I'm not telling people that I'm actually a hermit. I design by myself, and I'm not collaborative. I'm sorry, and I know that's kind of a dirty word, but I am in my mid-30s. I just have to be who I am, and that's just my design process. Sometimes I'm a loner. I need to not play music, shut myself in a room, and start working on it. And so what I do is that I go out in the world and travel. I travel 6 months out of a year. I just observe people. on the beach, in the cafe, whatever. Like try to like check out like the usual suspect, the stores and restaurants. And then I go back home and I lock myself and just like, okay, and start doing things. And just that's my process. It's not perfect, but it's me.
What makes a new object worth mass producing? There are so many things in the world.
So I think if I'm able to come up with products that when people touch and use it, there's a little bit of joy and they're able to like, wow, this is cool. And there's a little bit of excitement of using it. I think that's worth reaching out to a big mass of people. And I'm very drawn to Japanese aesthetic. And I go there quite often, 3-4 times a year. And I will visit ceramic maker and people who are just artisanal. And sometimes I feel like I'm a cheat because these guys, especially with the Japanese mentality, they repeat and repeat, repeat. They don't care what their customer wants. They just do what they think is best. And sometimes I feel like I'm a sellout, like trying to build something to reach a lot of people. But I do see a lot of value in it because I travel quite a bit, almost a bit too much, but every time I go, when I go to a place and then I walk into a store and I see my product and then I introduce myself and the shop owners suddenly become excited and say, oh, come on, let's take pictures and like that. I don't know, there's power to it and I'm still trying to figure out, I'm still small, right? But so that's kind of my answer. It's very personal, but for me, it's very fulfilling right now.
Area code 720 gave me good criticism about my music choice. I'm sorry, Spotify randomly pressed buttons. But they gave another question. Area code 720, thank you. Regarding your next project, what else are you struggling with outside of discovering that creative ideas are, to a degree, recycled? Oh, 7420, you're a good critic. That's good. Good question.
So I came from architecture, right? And a lot of us sometimes, we have this attachment to things that are old, things that are like, and I love old buildings, preservation is important. But when people ask me, so what makes it worth it to knock a building and replace it with a new, shinier object? I do believe that I'm agnostic in the sense. I do believe in preservation, but I love a city like London that they're able to detach themselves. If you can replace with something that is better, it's well worth it. And I think that's the thing with object design, at least personally. If you can, it doesn't matter whether it's original or not, but if you can make it better and so much more impactful, I think it's worth. But the problem is when you're just lazy and just like copying something. So that's when it becomes a problem.
Because you have asked a question in session 1, session 2, session 3. This is like the New York Times critic. How does architecture affect the ideation process for your products?
I think the way I designed when I was an architecture student, first you come up with schematic, right? You keep on adding, and there's the additive process, and you start stripping. I think it's the same thing with me and product design is, first it was just like I'm clobbering things, and I keep on adding functionalities, adding, and then when I start to strip it down to a point that you cannot strip anymore, I know I'm not original in voicing that, but that's kind of like how I approach design.
Okay, so please thank Max with me.
Thanks, Sean.